Okay, 2 o'clock, call the meeting to order.
Scott Holwick,
Here.
Roger Lang,
Here.
Renee Davis. Here. Tom Duster is not with us today, and Dan Wolford may join us later. Ken Houston,
Here.
Wes Lowry,
Here.
Kevin Bowden,
Here.
Hope Bartlett. Here. Alex Merkline,
Here.
Nicole Halpin,
Here.
Chris Hupper,
Here.
Lance Smith,
Here.
Heather McIntyre is here, and Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Glad to have you back with us. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, looking for approval of previous month's minutes. Any questions or comments before we move for approval?
No questions or comments, I move to approve.
I'd second.
Very good. Move and approve, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Kevin.
Flow at the St. Vrain this morning at 8 o'clock was 18 CFS. The 125-year historic average is about 35 CFS for this date. The call on the St. Vrain is the Rough and Ready Ditch, and that's an 1869 water right. The call on the South Platte River is Jackson Reservoir, and the priority date of that is the 2004 water right. Ralph Price Reservoir is at an elevation of 6396.6. That's about 4 feet down, or about 743 acre feet. Union Reservoir is at a gauge height of 21.9, or and that's about, let's see, 7 feet down. That's about 4,000 acre feet down. Right now, the select St. Vrain reservoirs at the end of September were 67% of full. If we look back last year at the same time, the reservoirs were about 75% of full. Yeah, it was a hot, dry fall, and we brought down those reservoirs quite a bit. So,
Questions for Kevin? Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
We have public invited to be heard today.
I don't believe so. We have one who is presenting with Hope later, and Councilmember Christ is with
And
us
you
as
are?
well.
I'm Courtney Black with Madura.
Very good. Okay, any agenda revisions?
Have none?
Moving right along. Okay, Wes, it's a big one for you, development activity.
So, yeah, nothing to put in front of the board today.
Okay, that's good. Okay, any general business, legislative guiding water principles. Alex, you want to
Yes.
discuss that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So as the 2025 legislative session approaches, we, the staff, would like to discuss with the board Longmont's guiding water principles and any input you may have regarding them. The attachment below that page shows the water principles of 2025, the proposed water principles for 2025 as passed by the water board last year. These guiding water principles allow the evaluation of how proposed bills may impact the city and its residents, and we come here asking for the board's revision and approval of these principles for 2025. Review, revision, and approval.
Can you mention any significant or maybe changes from where we were before? I mean, they're pretty much the same?
Yeah, these are the exact same as they were last year.
Exactly.
The date changed.
Yes, that's 2024 changed to 2025.
We made some
Went a bit
revisions.
early, didn't you, last night?
We made some revisions in 24, Roger,
Yeah.
to this document.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, great.
But as passed
Okay.
by this board last year,
Correct.
they're the same.
So, any comments about Renee, anything?
I'm fine with the way they are.
Okay.
I am as well, Roger. I think we did a pretty good job. I know that there are some interesting things contemplated to come before the legislature that would be water related, but I think that we're covered well with principles that we adopted previously.
Want to make a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the water principles.
I would second that.
Okay, all in favor?
I
Aye.
Thanks, Alex.
No problem.
Okay, efficiency master plan. Hope,
Yeah, and Courtney.
is you and,
Hold on one second. Will one of you comes? She's cool. Ideas.
I see it.
What is out of memory?
That ain't right. I usually have 14, 15 tabs open.
Jeez. One second. I guess your thing is too big, your
It might be.
program.
If she wants a session of Teams, you can probably join and just show
Oh, that's a good idea. Heather, if you do a Teams call,
Okay.
then I can just screen share.
Is anybody joining on Teams?
No.
No, but I can join and then share my screen.
Oh, okay.
You want me to call you?
Yeah. Good idea, Chris.
Since you have that.
Well, the other thing you can do is a wireless connect.
Well, just call me.
I
Then we
don't
don't
know
have
that
to
this is gonna work.
Just scroll down to my chat and then call me.
Sorry for the delay.
You're not home.
it doesn't know where
It is, that's so strange. There must be like a network issue happening.
Well, you know, the red light here tonight.
Becky's kidding.
Except Becky's.
got
Your red not present light was on.
Well,
in
yeah,
Teams.
because I'm in the meeting,
Oh, well, that.
in this present meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, that may be why it won't call you.
That's strange.
What is going on?
Yeah, do you have an HDMI?
We have wireless. Let me switch it over to you.
Okay, I don't know how to do that.
If you go down to the network thing,
Click on that right there. This? No, that right there. This?
The
What?
Wi-Fi.
Oh,
and then, network and internet settings. And then type in, connect to a wireless display. And then there's an SBWD in there.
it's the pressure.
Magic is about to happen, folks.
She was paid to say that by the sponsor.
Okay.
Ooh,
Okay, there you go.
Very good.
Yay. Okay, hi, sorry for that intermission. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so we're here to present on our 2024 update for our water efficiency plan. And I'm here with Courtney. She's the principal engineer. Whatever you want to call it, for Intera. And she is a highly experienced water consultant who prepares these plans for lots of utilities across Colorado. She also worked with Peter, our other consultant who worked on this plan who's not here, Peter Mayer. He's the principal investigator for Water Research Foundation, and he's working on the residential end use study version 3. And he also worked on our 2012 and 2017 water efficiency plans. And then so Courtney worked with Peter to create this, and she's also created the efficiency plan guidance documents for the CWCB. So why, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but why do we want to do water efficiency in Longmont? First and foremost, we want to be leaders of sustainability in our community. Coordinated water stewardship, working amongst departments interdepartmentally, preparing ourselves for climate change and creating resiliency and reliability, making sure we have diverse, healthy outdoor environments, reducing our carbon footprint, the delay and expansion of future infrastructures, and to preserve our local agriculture.
And so when we're talking about water efficiency planning in Longmont, you know, I'm speaking to the choir here too, Longmont's had a long history of water efficiency planning and conservation itself, the first plan being done back in 1996. So this is the 5th update to sequence of water conservation plans you've put together. It is required by the state, by statute, to have a state-approved water efficiency plan if you sell over 2,000 acre-feet. And so this is going to the state for final approval to be in compliance with that statute at the end of this. To kind of go back in history a little bit, one of the key goals of the 2017 plan was to reduce customer water use demands by approximately 10% by build-out being in 2048. And this has been accomplished. You guys have achieved that goal, and in 2024 of this year, savings are due to specific measures and programs have been estimated at about 143 acre-feet. Moving forward into this plan that all of you have had a chance to look at, if you have had time to look at it, we're really calling for saving additional water, and that is in the form of looking at a per capita water use metric of reducing that by about an additional 3% on average by 2030. So over then, of course, the next 7 years. A huge component of that will be reducing irrigated non-functional turf on city properties, as well as continuing to expand your raw water irrigation on city properties. Another goal is really integrating water efficiency across city departments. We're seeing more and more of this with water providers throughout the state, of really looking at how you can integrate water into land use planning, as well as just holistically, how can you implement a program where you're taking the advantages of various departments across the city and implementing that. And then also promoting water efficiency equitably. And to get a little bit more into the details of what that's entailing, that's helping ensure all people have access to safe drinking water. Encouraging this distribution, the economic, social, and environmental benefits across all sectors of the community. Promoting resiliency to climate risks, such as flood and droughts and wildfires. And then providing all members of the community to meaningfully participate in water efficiency related decision-making processes, and making sure that information is translated appropriately.
Let me ask you a quick question. It looks like you went from one measurement in 2017 goals to another. I mean, percent. I assume that's raw 10%, and then you went per capita. That's a different way of measuring, right?
It's using different metrics, yes. Partially, and Ken, please feel free to elaborate on this in terms of just historically, looking at the 10% based on build out is a little more difficult to message from a public messaging standpoint and to explain, and so that's why we opted to choose a different metric moving forward. But essentially, if you do all the calculations and look at it, you're still working with same types of numbers, it's just a different metric to look at it.
I just think per capita would be a more equitable way to measure, but that's just my opinion, so anyway, I'm curious. Thanks.
And so some data, this really tells the story in terms of just historically where Longmont's been at. The green line is showing increasing population since 1996, which is no surprise, you're a growing community, and so you've definitely seen increasing population as you've continued to develop. The pretty cool thing is that if you're looking at the total water produced, and those are the light blue bars here in the graphic, you're not seeing an increase in total water production. You're actually, if you're looking at kind of that 2000 to 2012 mark, and you compare those to the 2011 to 2023, it's actually lower. And that's an indication that per capita water use has been decreasing and really speaks to the City of Longmont's efforts in reducing water use over time via conservation and other measures. You go to the next slide. And you can see this starting in 2013 out to 2023. This is the per capita water use that has been observed via the billing data. And you can see a certain level of reduction over that course of period historically. And also, as I mentioned with the goal, now we're looking for achieving additional savings of 3% in the next 7 years. And so now getting into more the nit and grit of the plan, if you go to table 5.1 in your water efficiency plan, this table is a good summary table of what Longmont is planning on doing over the course of the next 7 years. And it's divided into these 7 or 8 categories. These categories are kind of the latest and greatest in terms of looking at different groupings of different water efficiency strategies across the state. It comes from Colorado Wise's best practice guidance document for municipal conservation. So we have planning and implementation strategies related to measurement data, rates and charges, codes and regs. Also focusing on the indoor water use efficiency piece, the outdoor, public outreach, and then raw and reused water. Raw water is not necessarily saving molecules of water, but what it does is it's not treated water, so it doesn't have to go through the water treatment plant, which does save energy. And then reuse, and Longmont's looking to optimize the amount of reused water they can based on existing water rights portfolio. So, and so I just mentioned the table here. This is a 7-year plan, and why it's 7 years is the state requires for water providers to update their plan every 7 years. So we're really focusing in on a 7-year planning horizon, and then this plan will be updated again. So there's an implementation plan, as well as there's a water efficiency monitoring plan. The monitoring plan really looks at, on a regular basis, of what kind of programs and measures Longmont has been implementing, how are water demands responding, and looking at what's working well, what do we want to continue moving forward with over the next 7 years, and then are there areas where there's lessons learned and things we can tweak. So there's continual looking at that over the course of the next 7 years to continue to fine tune the plan over time. What's new in this plan? One is really focusing on landscapes, on raw water, and on turf replacement. Another is really starting to take a closer look using the AWWA M36 auditing measures on annual water loss audits and validating that, and that's best standard practices that are out there for that. Peak demand management through irrigation timing shifts. So focusing in on city properties, a lot of times cities will do this by doing an odd even irrigation schedule across all residential customers, for instance. But there's a sufficient enough use of water that's going for, say, parks, irrigation of parks and such, that being able just to shift, and the city has direct control over this, or what the irrigation schedules are, we're anticipating that we'll see some reduction in peak demands, which is great news.
Is that the extent of your peak demand management at this time? Is parks and irrigation timing?
Yes, so we're focusing at moving forward. Right now we do nothing. So.
I know, it's an improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
Yay.
So,
Let me
this
rephrase that. This is a great improvement. Do you have any plans to go residential?
Yeah, eventually.
Okay.
We're gonna start, and that's part of what we feel is important in our programming, is being that role model. I don't want to be like, you guys can't water, during these times, when we're watering our parks during those times.
Cool.
Something like that.
Are you finding that parks are able to do it?
We haven't begun doing it. This is
Okay.
our draft plan, so welcome any comments and feedback.
Okay.
But yes, this is one of the measures that we're hoping to implement moving forward.
Okay.
But we have started engaging parks in an informal discussion way, and I think we can figure something out.
Okay, very cool.
Also, related to that, residents engage me to engage parks.
Yes, that's a big
about
part of that too.
Watering is because if somebody sees this park sprinklers running at 10 a.m. or noon, they write me a letter. That's
Yeah.
the way it works.
Yeah.
And so the answer I've gotten back in past years has been, well, our sprinkler system just isn't good enough to get everything watered earlier in the day.
Yeah.
But then we've been replacing the automation in the sprinkler systems for the last, 3 years? We've been
5
upgrading,
years, yes.
5 years, something like that. So you're probably coming in the right time to actually make that improvement.
Yeah.
So,
And part of that, again, is addressing our peak demand, which is 2 a.m. on Monday mornings. Yeah, so that's part of that, that's driving this big one, but, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, good question. And then our last one here is engaging with the land use planning to better integrate water. And this is something that the state has really been promoting over the course of the past 5 years of how can water be integrated with just looking at the future and where future developments are going to look like, and working with planning department to be able to do that. For instance, not putting in Kentucky bluegrass right with new development as opposed to putting it in and then say tearing it out 5 years or replacing it. So this is more, it can be viewed as much more of an economic approach to things.
I have a question about that too, because I should probably be going to Grant with this. Because I just answered a resident letter about that. It's like, why do you let the neighborhoods have all of this bluegrass? And, so I told them the real state of play about this, that HOAs are no longer allowed to force homeowners to have lawns. But I don't believe that we currently have the ability to force HOAs to use native turf. Does anybody know the answer to that before I go to Grant, since we're talking about it?
Yeah, so moving forward, starting in 2026, the state is no longer allowing anyone to implement non-functional turf. So that means business parks, right-of-ways, those types of things. As far as in HOAs, that is functional. We'll see where we go with our tree lawns, but I don't know. Do you want to answer this in a better way?
I mean, right now, the state statutes is required on non-residential. And on the residential side of things, it's still really up to the residents and HOAs on what they want to do.
Yeah.
That said, there's a lot of efforts throughout the state on starting to really hone in on educating HOAs, and different providers have different ways in which, how they're going about doing that
Okay.
in their area.
But I do not, the question is really, do we have a right to refuse to permit a development that doesn't promise not to plant bluegrass? I don't think we do, but that's the question. I mean, there's so little new development, permits that I'm not sure it makes much difference,
Yeah, we're not finding the single-family home with the lawn development.
Right, well,
With the
yeah.
lawn.
Yeah,
Higher density.
people are doing that by themselves. I mean, they're tearing out their turf at a pretty good clip, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope's been really good about putting together a growing water smart effort at Longmont, which is the first step you have to do. And then, you know, we're trying to work on the city non-essential turf, and then this, with the state language, we're able to go beyond that with commercial and like some other areas, but it doesn't go all the way to residential, but I think as the growing water smart effort goes forward, we're looking at the city code, and we have to change the city code first, and that's development code. That's an effort, but we think we'll get there.
And we're working on it.
Yeah,
There's an active, we're working on it. It'll happen someday.
it will.
That's actually a great segue for our next slide, which is to just talk about our current existing programs. So currently we partner with Resource Central and Efficiency Works as our, to help me run these programs. So Resource Central, we do slow the flow irrigation assessments, garden in a box discounts, water-wise yard seminars, and of course our turf replacements, which are super popular. And those are, again, on those residential properties. For Efficiency Works, we do rebates and discounts for both indoor and outdoor efficiency fixtures, such as toilets, aerators, and shower heads. And then for our outdoor, sprinkler heads, rain sensors, irrigation controllers, drip conversion kits, those types of things. Our multifamily and commercial programs, we're working with Northern Water to do indoor assessments for free for all commercial properties. So we've been able to do several city buildings actually, which have been really great to have pretty in-depth indoor water assessments done. For Resource Central, we do slow the flow irrigation audits on commercial and HOA properties. So HOAs are qualified for our commercial programs because of their meter size, so they're able to do those irrigation audits, which are really popular as well. And then of course water-wise yard seminars are open to everybody. And then Efficiency Works, they can do toilets, aerators, commercial size clothes washers, ice machines, pre-rinse valves, and commercial dishwashers, all those things that those businesses and restaurants need to make their businesses more efficient. We give them discounts and rebates for those as well.
And so, kind of in conclusion here, as I mentioned, we are going to be submitting this to state for it to be approved, and it will be meeting CWC requirements. It's based on Colorado's best practice guidebook for municipal water efficiency, and so it meets state requirements, as well as the state requirements, as well as on a national level. The American Water Association's G4 80/20 Water Conservation Program and Management Standards. So that's national standards. So essentially, Longmont's got a robust plan for state and national level.
So now we can open it up for questions and discussions. I also just lastly wanted to say that I worked with comms to do an outreach plan, and we were able to launch an online survey for people to go online, look at the full plan and or a summary, executive summary, online, and then do outreach and engagement on an online survey. So I will send those. We just launched it. We launched it right before this meeting, as this is our public engagement launch period. So we'll send you all the link for that if you want to, or we can take your feedback. But yeah, it would actually be great if you guys want to take the survey, because we're surveying on more than just our efficiency plan. We're also asking about future water programming, and there's questions about what type of landscapes the community prefers. So it's going to be a good public engagement opportunity.
Let me ask you a question about what we're building in Longmont today versus what we were a decade ago. Not a lot of residential property with lots of lawns is happening today. I can't help but think that that would help our water efficiency numbers people aren't watering lawns, I mean, there's a lot of savings there. Is that an impact that is reality? I mean, is that true?
Yes, that's very true. And you can see that reflected in the per capita numbers that
Yeah.
we're seeing over time. That definitely over the last 25, 30 years, we have gone from an average of a 7,000 square foot lot, a 10,000 square foot lot, down to, gosh, some of them are 25 feet wide by less than 100 feet deep, so less than 2,500 square feet for a lot. And most of that is house. So you have a postage stamp of lawn and maybe some pots that they're irrigating. And most of these are falling into what have been historically PUDs or planned unit developments, where they can more efficiently irrigate around the homes. So each home is not really irrigating anything, that their irrigation system is part of a larger irrigation system for the entire development. So yes, I'd say our developments have less green space than they did previously, and more living unit per lot.
Yeah, I just assumed that was what was happening, and it's just the way it is. So, I mean, it's less water per capita, obviously, and that's what we're trying to head, but, so, all right.
I'll follow up on that, Chris. So, seems to me that simultaneous with that good news, we probably face higher losses, system losses, as our infrastructure is old, right? And there's ultimately a replacement plan for the system, but you can't do that all at one time. It takes decades, right? Do we have a good handle on what our actual losses are? Because I'm not sure if we talked a lot about that at the Water Board recently.
Yeah, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, we do the AWWA M36 water loss audit. We've been doing
Yeah.
it since 2019, and then the past 2 years we've been getting it validated. So we do have all of that, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get those numbers to you guys.
Yeah.
It tells half part of the story, right? I mean, the total system use is both what's used and what would have been used had it not been lost along the way somewhere, right? So,
Right.
If I'm remembering right, Hope, we're somewhere around 10% loss.
which would be
in our system.
kind of typical for a system like this, but I just haven't seen a lot of data, so that'd be nice to see at some point.
Yeah, we did bring to the city council with our rate study an assessment of our cast iron and other
Yeah.
materials in the system, and we've requested a fairly substantial increase in our replacement CFPs. I think we've been averaging somewhere around $2 to $3 million a year, and we're moving up to the $8 to $10 million a year for replacements. So we hope to keep ahead of that, and we don't skyrocket in our losses. So.
Other questions? Well, Courtney and Hope, thank you for your presentation.
Can you send those surveys though? I'd like to
Yes.
go through
Yes,
that
please.
Yeah, I'm
process.
really
It's
excited
easier
about
than
it.
giving you feedback at a table situation to look at it linearly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
Invite your friends and neighbors to
We'll do.
participate too.
Little
I
part.
know. We were looking at our past engagement rates, and I think last year we had like 6 comments on the plan, so I know we
You
can
gotta do
beat
better than
that.
that.
I know we can do it. It's gonna be great.
I can beat that.
Me either. We have 3 more here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Windy Gap, update.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. I got quite a few slides, so I'll be running through the slides a little quick. First thing I want to do is show the water board. We get this update from Northern Water each month, and let me
You should just scroll down.
Can I just scroll down here? Okay. Couple things. I think we even reported this last month. All the grouting for the project on the main dam has been completed. One of the nice things about the updates now is we're starting to say this part of the project's done and that part of the project's done, which is really good. The upstream tunnel piping and backfill is all complete. You know, basically you've got the dam and you got the inlet and outlet tunnel pipes, two of the biggest parts really of the project. They've actually started on the inlet outlet tower in the dam. There'll be an outlet tower, huge structure because it's got to go 350 some feet tall. And it's going to be quite a project just in of itself. But that's really one of the critical things to get done before you can start putting water in the reservoir, because it's at the very bottom. You got to start there. The downstream tunnel works is a little bit slowing down a little bit. The spillway box culverts are all complete. There's still some open channel spillway work yet to do. And the saddle dam, this was at the start of the month, was 14 foot tall. Of course, that doesn't include the part below grade. It was 26 feet to go. We're now less than 20 feet to go on the saddle spillway, so that helps a lot. On the main dam, it's over, well, a couple weeks ago it was 268, so it's around 275 feet tall now. You can definitely see it even if you drive up the county road on the backside of the reservoir now. 5 to 6 lifts of asphalt still going in per week. As water guys, we don't like the dry fall, but as a project, we could have had a better fall for construction. Really only one issue right now is the crusher capacity. As the dam goes up, you have less large rock fill on each side, and you end up with the ability to produce enough finely crushed material for the asphalt in the zone 3, the small filter lens is right next to the asphalt core. And so that's really kind of what's going, or the critical path right now is getting enough crushed rock for that. This, as part of the project has to connect, or is going to connect into the Carter Lake pressure conduit. This is a picture of where it will connect. They dug up the pressure conduit that goes from the Flatiron Power Plant, the pumping plant, that pumps water up to Carter Lake. So we're not getting any water in Carter Lake right now. It's going to be a little while before water will flow into Carter Lake. Right now, all the water that's coming down the project's going up to Horseshoe Reservoir. But it's pretty amazing to see that pipe and how large that inlet pipe is to Carter Lake. There will be a major valve vault right here. This allows a number of things. One is you can fill Carter Lake now with a large diameter pipe. The pipeline that fills Chimney Hollow can also now fill Carter Lake. So if there ever is an outage on the Flatiron pumping plant, we'll still be able to fill Carter Lake. We did have a number of years ago had an explosion in that pumping plant that put us out of water. We couldn't pump for like 6 or 8 months, or a while, and Carter was pretty low. So that's a real safety and redundancy feature. And also, if Carter's down and Chimney Hollow is full, you'll be able to run water by gravity from Chimney Hollow to Carter Lake. So a lot of different things that does. But, that just kind of gives you a scale when you see the worker right here. That kind of gives you a scale for some of that stuff going in. This is the main control house valve vault. The valves are in there now, and the steel and the roof is going up, so it won't be long before. It is hoped that that's completely enclosed, so that it can continue uninterrupted through the winter. So that'll be good for that to happen. Finally, the contingency, currently $76 million budgeted contingency. That's from the start of the project today, and there's still
Tax out of that.
there still 23% uncommitted contingency, so we're still doing pretty good from that standpoint. As far as the construction schedule, this is the good, I'll call it the good fall, late summer fall, has helped them actually get ahead of the projection. The upper line's the fastest projection, of orange line's the hopefully lowest projection. We're right up here right now. So still looking at an August 25 completion, but it looks like we're about a month ahead of schedule right now. So that's pretty good. So that project is going very well. The other main project as part of the Windy Gap firming project is the Colorado River Connectivity Channel. And I wanted to spend a little more time today on, we've talked about that in the past, but the project had a ribbon cutting and grand opening last week. So we're very excited about that. It's fully functional. The contractor's doing a little bit of cleanup work, but should be out in the next few weeks and have this project completely finished. And I'll just point out a couple elements on it. So this is kind of a little bit of our west slope mitigation. When the original Windy Gap diversion project was built, the dam went clear across the valley, clear over to the railroad tracks here. In fact, you can see what was the south abutment, south embankment, and then it came from here, it came all the way across here. This is the spillway for the Windy Gap Firming project. So basically, the entire valley was reservoir. So the connectivity channel was installing a containment dike dam right down the middle of the current reservoir, and then constructing the connectivity channel on this side. Used quite a bit of almost half of the, a little bit less than half, but almost half of the reservoir's site so that we could do a much better job of creating that connectivity channel. Just to kind of point things out, this tree line is the Colorado River, this tree line is the Fraser River. Their confluence is right here, just immediately upstream of where the connectivity channel starts. And then the connectivity, the main part of it is right here. Highway 40 goes out Granby to Kremling. You can literally drive on Highway 40, pull over the side of the road, and all the structure's right down below you. So if you ever get over there, spend a few minutes, stop on the side of the road there and take a look at it. But this is where it diverts water, and then either divert it into the Windy Gap Reservoir or on around through the connectivity channel. The connectivity channel will always have water in it. You can see they did a really good job about recreating a lot of natural features of a natural stream, and that has already it's functioned so well. They've documented a really great migration of fish up and back, and there's a small fish called a sculpin, little tiny guy, that most fishermen never even see because they don't fish for them. They're considered one of the worst swimmers there are, and so they were not even found in the river above Windy Gap before this work, and they've made it all the way through this connectivity channel, which is significant. Just some pictures. So this you can see the confluence is right here up above it. So this is looking upstream from the structure. This is the gates. Now this is, the gate here is a floodgate. So normally the flow will go down the connectivity channel, and the amount of water needed to pump, to either both fill the reservoir and to pump, will come just off the side of it. This gate will actually be normally up, and then if there's a major flood, it will lower so that the flood can go through the Windy Gap Reservoir and over the spillway so that it doesn't tear up the connectivity channel, because we don't want to lose that. Here's looking downstream. You can see this picture was, so that much of gate is on each side of the picture. This concrete block right here, that is where the gate is that allows the water to go into, so that'll take the normal flows while this is normally open. You can see a lot of really good design features in this project. So now you're just starting to see the connectivity channel here, and you can see it's going to normally take the flows and it's going to function real good. One interesting, at least for me, an interesting note was this training wall. Clear across the river, and this training wall goes almost all the way over to the railroad tracks. That will help keep, when the Colorado River gets up above this channel and goes over bank, it'll keep it from tearing up that channel. So that was a really good feature. Just for me, from an engineering standpoint, like this is standing at the same place, looking downstream, and you can see what was the Colorado River before the project, and this is the channel that'll go into the Windy Gap Reservoir. And this is the channel where we'll deliver water out of this structure downstream. Now this is the first, I'm just going to take you real quick through some pictures of the connectivity channel, because it's actually a pretty long channel. So there's a number of pictures here, but you can see some of the features. They put some woody debris as bed anchor on the outside of where the water will go around. There's a little more woody debris here. You can see a lot of vegetation just starting. There was, I think what he said, 17,500 plants planted as part of this. But you can really see the natural character, the riffles, the calmer parts. There's a good riffle there. Going on down. And you can just see right here, they actually created a dual channel, kind of replicate what you'll find a lot of times in nature. And both of them are functioning. When it gets really low, it'll just be one of the two channels running. And then that's the smaller of the two channels. You can see the embankment, the new embankment is right here, and right there is where the old embankment went. You're in what would have been the bottom of the reservoir before this project was constructed. And that may be all of it, because I think it all didn't come in. That's okay, we're fine. So anyway, that's the connectivity channel. Been been working very well. Everybody's excited. Was expensive, partially because you had to, completely build a whole new embankment. But that's one of the real critical parts of the project and the mitigation on the west slope. That's also one of the issues that showed not only did the project do environmental mitigation, but it did enhancement work. So Colorado River will be better off, actually, after this project's constructed. So that's kind of where we are right now with Windy Gap. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Is it pretty much completed?
It is, yeah. They're just doing cleanup work. It's been functioning all summer. Been running water through it all summer, well, almost a year now. But it worked really good last spring and summer, and very successful. Yeah.
Any questions?
No?
Okay, thanks, Ken. Okay, water rate fee update.
Okay.
Okay, Heather, you're gonna call me, is that?
I'm gonna try to switch you over like we did before. not working there either. Sorry, you guys, it's a challenge today. Try to pull it up real quick. It's not switching over, Lance. Guess we crashed the computer.
Can I just plug an HDMI cable into this, into my laptop?
I don't have an HDMI cable.
Okay.
Unless you want to bring it up really close.
Wow, I can't bring it that close.
There, now try. Let's see if this will do it. Can you try pulling up this wireless right there? Click on that. And then go to settings. And type in connect to the display. Wireless display, I guess it has to say. That one right there. Well, it's restarting for some reason. Can you talk while it's reloading? Let's try it. Try connecting one more time, Lance. There we go.
Okay, so I am Lance Smith, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of the rate study that we did for 2025 through 2029. I'm really just repeating a presentation I gave to council on September 3rd. At which I was asking for a little bit of direction because there were two rate options being presented, a 3-year schedule and a 5-year schedule. City council did recommend that we go with the 3-year schedule, so I'll talk about that a bit in a minute. This was something that we've been working on for the whole year, so we went to council in May to give them an update of the initial need. We then talked to city council in July about our capital improvement plans and some significant capital projects we had that are kind of outside the norm there. Then in September, I updated them with this presentation on the cost of service findings and proposed rates. Then this month, we went for first reading on October 2nd or 8th, October 8th, I think. Yeah, and so we're going to go for second reading tomorrow night on the 22nd. Those are the proposed rate ordinances, and the rates would go into effect January 1st. And feel free to stop me along the way if you got questions. But initially, I talked to council in May, talked about where we were at as far as operating income, which is the green line there is the operating revenues and the red line is the operating expense. The space in between them is the operating income. That operating income is used to pay debt service. It's also there to fund capital improvement projects, system renewal projects primarily. And as you can see, particularly in 2023, that gap, that space closed significantly. And so that suggests that we have less money available for capital work. Now in July, Chris and Joe and John talked about the capital improvement plan. There's kind of normal system renewal work that needs to happen every year. And that's really wrapped up in the 15 plus additional CIPs there for that $26 million over this 5-year period. So that's a little over $5 million a year we would be spending on capital work, which is about 1/5 or about 20% of operating revenue. But then you see the 4 projects above that also need to happen in this 5-year window for $147 million outside of that normal capital program. And so that $147 million there is more than we will take in operating revenue, so there will need to be debt associated with these projects. And these projects are what I was calling kind of generational projects. So we won't be building, another treated water storage tank or reservoir over the next 40 or 50 years. That cast iron pipe, that's the mainline pipes that serve our community. Again, you don't replace those very often, so kind of once in a generation you would replace those. Sorry. Didn't need that. Okay, there we go. And then there's the Nelson Flanders water treatment plant expansion. There's also site improvements associated with that. And so we've got about $30 million of site improvements, and then we would be ready to do the actual expansion, build out the process train. And again, you won't do that maybe once every 50 or so years. So,
What's the dates on the expansion start date?
So what I'll talk about here in the rate study is that we've looked at a number of, so there are a number of rate pressures here, and one of the things we looked at was delaying capital as long as we could. And so the Nelson Flanders expansion we've delayed until 2029, which is the last year that our demand projections say we can wait. So we anticipate doing that project, beginning that project in 2029, Chris?
Yes. Yep.
Any downside to the, I don't wanna call it the delay, but I mean, are there any issues waiting until then?
Yeah, financially, we don't know what's gonna happen in the next 5 years, so there's a financial risk there. Operationally, I think Chris will speak to that.
Yeah, operationally, we don't have a chart that shows this right now, but our peak demands are still below the peak operation of the plant. And we've held that since, I want to say 2007, 2008, I think was our peak of 36 MGD. And we're rated at 40 MGD on the plant right now. So as long as things stay normal, that we don't have a drought, and that I will say that since that time, I think that we have operationally looked at the way that we operate our tanks and our system, which has helped keep that peak below a threshold of around 32 to 33 MGD. So we have some buffer, we have some space. It does not necessarily allow us to bring on a large water user that would come to the city. If something large came to the city, such as a pharmaceutical manufacturing or chip manufacturing, we'd have to look at how we would address that and how we could treat that water in order to get it to them. But with the current rate of growth that we have and the current water usage that we have, we are comfortable waiting until 2029 to do that.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so where are operating revenues used? So this graph is intended to reflect, it's a percentage on the left there. So that orange line represents 100% of operating revenues. The gray bar being operating expenses, so that's normal operations, O&M. The yellow is debt service. The blue is capital outlay, system renewal capital outlay. And so anytime the stacked bars exceed the orange operating revenue line, that means that we're either using reserves to fund this additional expense, or we may be issuing debt to fund that additional expense. But really the intent here was just to show that that we have been exceeding our operating revenues in the past, and in the last 4 or 5 years you can see a trend that's going upward. Now partly that's driven by increased debt service costs, and part of it is increased capital investments. So challenges with the rate study, forecasting inflation is always a challenge. Operating income has been less than we anticipated over the recent past. 2023 in particular was a very wet year. Operating revenues in 2023 were 10% below operating revenues from 2022, and about 17% less than we were projecting for 2023. There are significant increases in the identified capital investments. When I say previously 30 million, now 173 million, that previously meant in the 2020 rate study. So updating that now, we reflect a significant increase of 173 million in capital. And then part of that has to do with the timing of the master plan. So in the 2025 budget, we've included a master plan update. That master plan update will take a year to 2 years, so we won't have it immediately. But we will have it ahead of the 3-year rate schedule that I was talking about. So as the 3 years wraps up, we'll have a current master plan, the associated capital improvements associated with that, and then we can look at what our capital needs are going to be over the next 5 years. So assumptions that we have actually in the model, I did assume 5% inflation. We're also assuming that if we issue debt, it would be at our standard, our current rate, so we're currently AA rated bond. We do anticipate some customer growth. We see customer growth every year. That's in the number of customers, not in the use per customer. And then demand similar to kind of our 5-year average. We do anticipate conservation bringing that down somewhat at 0.5%. Here, I think what Hope showed was 3% over the 5 years, so that's 0.6. And then additional debt issuances may be considered. So this slide, a lot of numbers there. The top row, debt coverage ratio. So the debt coverage ratio represents how much money you have to pay your debt. So we have 1.5 times to cover our debt is the target that we're setting. So we want to have some margin there. Then you look at how much net pledge revenues you have. So you take in your operating revenues, you have non-operating revenues. You pay your operating expenses. What you're left with is called the net pledge revenues. The net pledge revenues are then allocated to existing obligations, so existing bonds, and then potentially available for additional bonds. So that available line there is then used to calculate the available debt capacity, assuming that AA rated debt and looking at it on a 20-year or a 30-year time frame. And then down at the bottom is where, so I guess stepping through that, in 2029, we have about $184 million worth of debt capacity in 20-year debt, or $236 million in 30-year debt. Then down below, it talks about proposed issuances. So the first being the $32 million for Nelson Flanders site work. That is $32 million that is left with the authorization that was sought from citizens in 2019. 2020. So that we already have authorization for. What we would need to go and ask for additional authorization for would be the Nelson Flanders expansion, which you see in 2029, and then potentially this distribution main replacement program, which on the previous slide was $44 million. We would be potentially looking at issuing debt for $35 million of that $44 million. So with that, then we're going to look first of all what our forecasted revenue requirements are. So the revenue requirements consist of the dark blue bar, the O&M expense, the orange bar, the capital outlay, the light blue bar, debt service on top. And then there are some other revenues other than operating revenues that come in that will partially offset this. So we're looking at $2 to $5 million there. But you can see from the green line that our current revenues are not going to meet all of those revenue requirements. So ways to close that revenue gap. We could issue revenue bonds. And issuing revenue bonds is appropriate for long-term capital investments, generational investments. Essentially, you're going to ask the customers for the next 20 to 30 years to pay off this debt, so they need to be benefiting from whatever infrastructure they are paying for. We could delay capital investments. We did look at that. Nelson Flanders expansion has been delayed as far as we feel we could comfortably do. We can use existing available reserves to cover that shortfall, or we can look at increasing rates. And I've put these kind of in order of how we try to look at them. So increasing rates is something that does need to be done occasionally, but we want to look at all of those other things before we get to increasing rates. So, as I said, we are proposing issuing some debt, $147 million over the next 5 years. We did propose delaying Nelson Flanders expansion. It's only 1 year at this point, but it's as far as we could go. And then we would propose using some of the available reserves, $15 to $20 million, or $3 to $4 million per year. But we are still going to need to look at adjusting rates. It says 9 to 9.75% each year going forward for the next 3 or 5 years. So the options presented were, option A was a 5-year schedule. And again, looking at this, I tried not to change the colors. So the dark blue is O&M, the orange is capital, the light blue is debt. The other revenues to offset it is that green bar, and now on top of that's that, I'll call it salmon, but the very bottom bar is the use of reserves. Now what I will say is that we're still not getting that green bar above the blue bar there, the stack chart. And in the 3-year schedule, we're also not quite getting it above there, but we're saying over the next 3 years, we'll make adjustments in rates because we know some adjustment is going to be necessary. Meanwhile, we're going to update our master plan, develop our CIP going forward, and then we will come back and talk about rates at that point. Getting down to what that really means for the average citizen here. So residential water service would be going up $4 or $5 up to $6 per month each year. Now, looking at how that compares to neighboring communities, you can see the dark orange there is really where our average bill is, and it would be going up $4.46. Wouldn't really change where Longmont is relative to the other communities. This is not considering any increases that other communities may have, so it's likely that Broomfield, for example, might be above us. Then the lighter orange bar reflects where our customers that are eligible for our Longmont Cares program, where their water rate would effectively be at the end. So it will be going up about $2.77 per month, but still lower than almost anyone else, depending on what Louisville does. And then looking at the whole utility bill, so there are other increases coming in 2025. Electric rates are going up about 6%, so that's that $5.71. That's per month. Per month. And the water rates here, that $4.46 we talked about. Wastewater had another rate increase before of $3.39. So in total, we're talking about the bill going from $219 to $232. So an increase of about 6%, I think, is what that worked out to. And then for those customers on CARES, currently they're getting about a $38 rebate. That rebate would increase to $46 in 2025. So the effective increase for those customers is a $5 increase on their utility bill. And that's really it. Then I got to the point of the council's discussion and seeking direction there. So.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, sir.
You might want to start. You have some questions, I know.
Yeah, okay, I can start with, I sent some questions to Rhonda, and I think the first one was looking at the difference in the rate between that of the city of Longmont residents and what we're providing and the cost for the town of Lyons. Pretty significant difference. Why is Lyons getting water, the increase at like $3 and the resident of Longmont $4.50?
Right, so Lyons is a wholesale customer.
Meaning what?
Meaning that they're providing us raw water, we're treating that water for them, we're then providing that water to them through a pipe that is their pipe. So they're not paying for any of the distribution system in Longmont because they're not using that distribution system. So that increase that we're talking about really should only be a part of what Lyons's water rate increase needs to be. But it's on the treatment portion.
The other question that I had was more policy issues where the medians and the arterials are exempt from this perspective, any of the increases. And I'm just curious, based on my experience and what I've seen, is that many of the medians are not managed well and excess water, and it would make sense, at least from a water conservation perspective, to include those and encourage water conservation in our arterials and medians. And I assume that's a policy decision, and I know planning and parks and a lot of folks are looking at the landscape maintenance standards, and that may come into consideration at that point in time too. But I would strongly recommend that we not exempt the arterials and the right-of-ways and medians from this.
And I think there's some great policy recommendations also in the water efficiency plan around setting water budgets for those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
kind of comparing usage, so, yeah, a good conversation to initiate.
I've got a quick question. So, if I read that correctly, the water rates are going to be increased, basically, was it 10% a year? Did you say for the next 5 years?
Yes.
3? And what did we do the last 5 years, just roughly on water rates?
So we had a descending rate increase. I think this year water rates went up 6%. So they went up 6% this year. I think it was about 7% last year and 8% the year before. That was based on the rate study that was done right before the pandemic, and the rate schedule that was adopted right before the pandemic. So
Percentage increase, it's less going forward than what we had the last few years, basically, percentage-wise. Is that correct?
no, it's going to be more.
I thought you said it was something like 7 or 8% previously.
Yeah, and now it's going to be closer to 10%.
Okay, that's right. All right.
Does staff have a recommendation on a 3 or 5 year
I
plan?
don't think we made a recommendation, but council went with the 3-year plan.
Okay.
Because, mainly, if we had to, and we adopted the 5-year plan, we could still raise rates in the 3rd year if we needed to stay
Sure.
solvent. So we just decided to.
Scott or Renee, any questions?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you.
One last thing, and Dan, this is another question, I don't know if you want to bring up, but is it policy, some council policy that the water board not give any comments, proposed water rate forecast prior to it going to city council? I mean, is that?
Right, so I've been with the city for 6 months, so I'm not sure what you had previously done. I have in the past presented water rates to a water board, but I'm not, I think Becky maybe can answer that question.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the area of expertise in the board is primarily in water rights and water supply. You know, if that's not accurate, we should be bringing other policy issues here, then we'd be happy to do that.
So, I'm thinking back farther than my brain wants to, but we did, in order to keep the rate increases lower in the 2018-19 year, we reduced our shares of Woody Gap, did we not? So there is a precedent for blood board helping figure that out. It was very sad.
So it goes to council?
It's been
for
council.
Second reading?
Second reading, yeah.
Okay.
If you have a recommendation about how this could be avoided, that might be worth a disruption on second reading. You know, that's what second readings are for. We couldn't think of anything.
Could be looking at 50% like one of the towns down south further.
Any thoughts on that?
I would welcome seeing rates. I would welcome helping council with rates and seeing rate presentations before the first reading or however council would like to direct.
Right, well, I actually don't, you know, council is pretty passive about, we take it as it comes to us.
Right.
You know, if you would like a motion that future rate increases be passed by the associated board, we can do that. Or you can just bring future rate increases to us, whatever you like.
I would mention that there are no other boards that review rates before they are proposed to council.
Yeah, it's because the other rate things don't have boards, and I've tried to get them for the last 5 years. But interestingly, the associated directors don't want a board.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I would question that because I understand that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board review annually when there's rate hikes for like access to Union Reservoir or some of those other things.
So utility rates are
I'm just
set on
saying-
cost of service and are generally not reviewed by boards, but council can direct, you know, whoever council
Yeah.
wishes to direct.
So, you know, what, the thing that I would think about, and frankly, policy-wise, I have, for example, I don't know those rules, including the one you just cited, Becky. What I do know is that the council has not clue one what we could do to mitigate the rate increase, the rate of increase of rates. So some knowledgeable organization is going to have to think about it first. We did have a real anomalous situation where a redefinition of rates changed the burden of the electric rates on the average ratepayer in about 2018, I think. But that was just weird. We put in we made high consumers pay a bigger share of the increase for the meters, and also the original rate suggestions required that residents pay for the whole share of the meters because commercials weren't getting new meters. But the commercial people were benefiting from the projected changes that the meters would get, so that didn't seem right. And so we re-swizzled it, and that did come from council, but it was, that was an anomaly, you know? It just so happened that one of us had done this in a previous life. You wouldn't expect that.
I'm not to put you on the spot, Marcia, but how do you feel about some input from the water board on rates, water rates?
Well, I would be happy to hear input from any source that would make it easier on consumers. So, you know, again, this is not a design from the council, so we don't have any pride of ownership in it. We are just the ones who take the fall and answer the letters and so on. So I don't, you know, I don't even remember the way the conversation went when we decided to use, you know, reduce our shares in Windy Gap. I don't remember whose suggestion that was. That might have come from council.
It was, we regularly reviewed our participation level, and as we were updating our future water demand evaluations, and our future demand was going down,
Yeah.
conservation, and we adjusted it, and that really was a continuing effort on the water board
Yeah.
to look at the numbers and look at demand, and it was, I thought, a very good process where
Yeah.
water board would review that and make recommendations.
Well, and there's kind of a, there's two issues that were intertwined back then, because on the one hand, the size of our shares in Windy Gap was, you know, there was a big discussion between water board and staff, as I recall. And council got involved with that, and I think it was an election issue in 2017, as I recall.
Yes.
And then it was discovered later by falling back that we could moderate the rate increase a bit, and we did that. And that's what I don't recall anything about how the process went, where that recommendation came to council, but council was happy to make the number smaller.
Yeah, it seems like, having been part of the board and part of that conversation, that was a lot, but moving forward to the future, it feels like the water treatment plant is frankly a really big ticket item, and is the new kind of issue to figure out. I mean, it's a big ticket item.
You know, they're like, who monitors what's the right time to consider issuing the new debt, and who monitors whether there are fluctuations in capital, in materials costs for that? You know, sure isn't council.
And based on my rate experience elsewhere, it might behoove council to consider asking staff for a presentation around a financial plan that addresses those exact issues. It looks at debt service coverage, looks at timing of projects. I'm a little concerned we're our backs against the wall on the treatment plant, but looks at like fund balances, and if you can do the rate increase well before you need the treatment plant, so you have some reserves to help pay for it, and it's not just debt issuance. Because I gotta say, 10% rate increase for the last, and then going forward, it's a pretty long window of 10% increases.
Yeah, it's a big, and that's.
And those end up being doubling it.
Yeah.
Pretty
So-
quick, doubling the bill.
Excellent.
So we are in for the shorter of the series of increases. So we could follow that with an amendment that says we would like the water board please to monitor this and see if we can bend that rate at any point in the next 5 years based on,
Or the next 10. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it might be that our back's against the wall,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, no, we don't know, we don't want, we don't think there's a way to delay Nelson Flanders any longer.
Yeah.
But maybe we could do some financial tricks to delay the cost of starting, or to reduce the cost of starting Nelson Flanders. So,
Yeah.
boy, I could use some bullet points or something, because I'm willing to make the motion, but I'm not sure that I'm knowledgeable enough about the financial language to get it right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you guys, you looked at 3 and 5. Did you look at a longer period of time?
Yeah, our financial plan includes,
Like a 10-year, I'm just thinking reducing the increase to the individual, but prolonging that over a longer period of time, so it's not
That's-
quite the big hit.
That's really what the debt issuances will do, those 20 and 30-year debt issuances for the generational projects is spread those costs out over, current and future users. But, we have to be able to issue the debt in time to start the project.
Right.
Otherwise, we can't hit the go button.
And we still have a bit of a window to move around in terms of when we issue the debt, not very much.
Not very much.
It's pretty tight,
We're pretty tight.
which puts a lot of risk in what happens in the market in the next X amount of months, right?
It does.
And then you're dealing with little or no reserves and some options there too.
And, I know everybody knows this here, but we're really catching up, and the utilities are on the back end of all the inflation that's happened over the last 5 years. And 5 years ago, we anticipated 3% inflation, and that's not what's happened. You can see from the numbers that Nelson Flanders was estimated at a $50 to $55 million project. Now it's a $95 million project.
Yeah.
So,
And we were very fortunate to issue debt in 2021 at sub 2% rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really good. But the remaining authorization that we have, we really are timing the markets and just waiting to see what happens.
but that issuance did allow us to move Montgomery Tank forward,
Yeah.
which could have been a major failure in the system,
Yes.
but we're moving forward on that now. So.
But having a discussion about this and maybe having a presentation about this, because the public does not know. I've answered the letter that, comes and says, well, wait a minute, this huge rate increase, we thought we were done with inflation. I said, well, we are, and I mean, it's back down to 3%, but this was caused by the 9% 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they don't think of it that way, just like they think that their groceries should go back down. Not the way it works, but that's what they expect.
Well, maybe we could internally discuss within the board is what we think might be pertinent or not pertinent. I can't believe some input, if it's makes some sense, will be valued.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we want to talk to each other and hope we help by that discussion. So why don't we have kind of a discussion with ourselves and see what we think is maybe some appropriate suggestions, and then we'll just come
Right
back,
now or next month?
next month.
Oh, okay, well, because, if I'm going to make any recommendations before we pass the rate tomorrow on second reading, I need to make a motion. Now, obviously, you can change the rates anytime you want legally, but if you want something, on the table to be said tomorrow, I would need some language by tomorrow. If you don't think that we need to do that, then I'll just let it go ahead.
Well, I don't know that I don't think you need to do that, but I think it's a little late in the game, really.
Yeah,
I'd rather have the discussion before
Yeah.
a first reading. And the timing is not, to me, right to do anything different than what's being done.
Yeah, well,
we're on to a second reading tomorrow. I don't
Yeah.
have talking
Yeah.
points for you for tomorrow.
okay, so we're on to a second reading tomorrow, and in terms of the most immediate needs for revenue increases, we gotta do this for the next couple of years, or we won't have enough money.
I do salute council for picking the 3-year option rather than the 5-year option. I think that gives a better true up and a little more chance to look into it.
Why don't we get back with you?
Pardon me?
We'll get back with you,
Okay.
once we decide amongst ourselves what makes it. But I think some dialogue, you knowing what we think and vice versa, I think that's healthy.
So you meet in November, but not December, is that right? Or you don't meet again until?
No, we meet
Jan-
both.
Both
We
months?
just do it early, right?
Okay.
In December.
Third Monday still.
Okay.
It's the sustainability board that doesn't meet in December.
Yeah, well,
Because that's not sustainable.
yeah. So, given that this is kind of a big deal, either Roger or Ken or Heather, would you set me, because you guys are one of the few boards that is set up for hybrid meetings. So would you loop me in, because I'm not gonna necessarily be in town at those times.
Yep, we could do that.
Thank you.
We might be a
Lance,
little
thank you.
technologically challenged.
Any other questions on this issue? Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome to Longmont.
Yeah. I hope you like it here.
We're a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks again. Okay. Water resources, engineering projects. Joe.
So unfortunately, Joe had a death in his family and has been gone for a little bit. Holly was not able to come this afternoon, so instead of getting the 5-cent tour, I'll give you the 1-cent really quick tour of what's happening.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to try and deal with the computer or not. I think most of you have an idea of where things are that we've been talking about. So we can just go through them. Holly's been working on our North St. Vrain supply line that comes from Button Rock, basically down Highway 36 to the treatment plant. They did a reline project. It was about 1,800 feet long, about 900 feet upstream and downstream from where US 36 hits Highway 66. That project has just been wrapped up. They're doing a couple of minor things with cathodic protection, but it's basically done and was put back online on October 1st, which was a good thing for our treatment plant. They were operating without the North St. Vrain line, and we were taking water from the Highland in the time that it was down. So that's been a major accomplishment and a very good project that reinforced that pipeline through there. Actually, right before they started, we had a hole in the pipe that sprung a leak that was about that big around and was spraying water all over the highway. And our operations guys were able to fix that and keep it running until we could get this lining in. So that line was installed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but around 1946, I believe.
57.
57 is that section. So it's been in the ground a long time, and it was a good project to get done. Holly is also working on other segments of that line for future years as well. And right now we're reevaluating or evaluating some of those fixes that will be happening. The other thing that Joe wanted me to mention was the South St. Vrain pump station. That was constructed a couple years ago, but had a lot of issues associated with it. They also had a problem with flooding right after it was constructed. The vault filled with water. They fixed all those problems, and they are scheduled to start it up this next week to do some vibrational testing on it, with the intent that we'd be able to use it next water season. And be able to use our water rights out of the South St. Vrain. And Ken tell me that's one of our most senior water rights that we have. One of the first water rights the city acquired, right?
The city water right, yeah.
So that's a good thing. And then the last one I had on here was Price Park tank. which is in operation right now, and if we get done here in a little bit, we can get up there and take a look at it. I don't know if you have any
Everybody interested in
questions
doing that?
on
I won't be able to, but I can see it from my walks with my dog every day.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've been watching that for a long time.
I probably won't be attending that.
Dan, you want to see it?
We'll just come over to your house and cut it down.
Right, there we go.
Before or after the,
That's up to you.
well, if
As
you're
long as
willing
it's after
to,
5, I think it's,
would you do that?
Oh, certainly, yes, we can go up there and take a look at.
Yeah.
We won't be able to go in any of the structures. The tank has water, it's full. The pump facility is underground, so we wouldn't be able to go in there. But we can look at each of the things that they've constructed there. I think one of the major things is that we've taken the old 2 million gallon tank and the 7 million gallon tank and consolidated into an 8 million gallon tank, which is a much smaller footprint than it was previously. So there's additional park space out there, and a lot of other improvements.
It's amazing how much park space.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, it's double what was there,
Yeah, it seems like
at least. It's really quite,
It's more usable too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, try not to make it a one-to-one slope on the park
I do.
space. So.
Okay. We got some interest, so I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Any comments on our major projects listing that anybody wants to, concerns, or you agree with it, or? Nothing. Ken, all right. I don't think there's any more informational items.
Nope, they were attached in the packet, that's all.
Okay. Cash in lieu, we're gonna look at December.
We will, if, I would like to bring up one slide, just an information update for the board. You may recall, the board had made a recommendation to increase the cash in lieu based upon the Windy Gap Firming project. We had originally scheduled that at the end of October. Unfortunately, the council meetings have gotten like mega filled this fall, and so because we won't be initiating that increase until next year as part of the recommendation, it did get slid until the December 10th meeting, and that's when we'll go to water board, or to city council, excuse me, to take that recommendation.
With the idea it'd still be effective in January?
Yeah, correct.
That's a
Well, I probably won't be able to make the January 1st because we'll be taking it to the study session in December, which then means only I can't get scheduled until the 1st of January. So it might be late January, early February.
Wouldn't be the
Yeah.
end of the world
About
if we
this.
moved out a month.
Well, we haven't actually had any cash in lieu come in probably in a year, so.
Well, we want to
Yeah,
be
we
ready
won't hurt
when
anything.
we
We will
need
be
it.
ready, yeah. So it won't hurt anything to postpone it, but yeah. I just want to let the board know that it's going to be just a little bit later, but it'll still
Okay.
go to council.
So you're anticipating cash in lieu would be effective at the end of January?
Yes, we
Provided
haven't set a
council
date, but
approves
we gotta,
Not to
Yeah.
overstep that, but
we'll have that conversation about, and it'll depend on when I can get back on the council agenda. We're gonna do it as a study session, because it is, a little bit bigger increase, and to highlight the fact that we're gonna try to do them just once a year, on a set schedule, just get all that information to council, so,
yeah, it's a process and I know it's a big bite, but
yeah,
hey,
but
let's try to keep.
I think we're still, on track.
One of the things I liked about the new plan was the January 1st
Yeah.
increase, and I know you can't, but if we can move towards that, keep it close. And then next year
Next year we'll hit it.
we'll hit it.
Good. I don't know if there's any other items to bring up. Anybody got anything else?
Did we not, at last month's meeting, talk about, and maybe it's in the bylaws, about issues like the open space bond issue and having a discussion related to something of that nature, you know, where the board is asked to provide support outside of maybe this expertise to the city council. I think Tom brought that up last month, that we might have a further discussion about a process by which we might do that in the future.
Been ringing a bell?
Yeah,
It's foggy to me, to be honest with you.
I think it was more of a question about a process by which the general public came to a variety of boards, and, you know, not just this board, and asked for their support for yet another issue back to council.
Yeah.
And whether there was precedent or how we
You talking
wanted to
about
deal
the
with that.
ballot
Yeah, some of
issues?
like
Yeah.
the ballot issue.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to have a discussion about a process by which that happens again, or could possibly happen again. Again, I think the bylaws,
I think he kind of did ask the question,
yeah, that's the only thing I can think of.
Do you remember that conversation, Ken?
yeah, and we hadn't said when we do it, and I guess internally we thought it would make sense to look at that when we do our next review of the bylaws and have that conversation for 1 or 2 meetings before that and make that decision at that point as part of our bylaws. We could certainly do it before, we could do it anytime. Yeah, we don't have it on our schedule to do it right away, and we'd be happy to bring that back sooner if preferred, but I think having that as part of our bylaw, our annual bylaw review would.
We don't really have a position on it, and that's the situation.
Yeah.
You know, if we want to take a position.
Tom had brought that up.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And then based on today's discussion, is there a time when we want to talk about our role in, because I'm even looking at the bylaws and it doesn't say anything about our review of water rights.
Water rates.
I understand that, but the response was we were only looking at water right type issues.
Bylaws very, well, if you look at the municipal code,
What is
which is
that?
what is referenced in the bylaws, the purview of the water board is strictly to the water rights aspects of the water. It doesn't say anything about rates.
So if that's a discussion we want to have at some point in time.
So it's a bylaws amendment if you guys are gonna participate in that.
It would need to be a code, municipal code in the charter amendment to the board's charter, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my question would be, are there other things that we would want to provide input to and maybe not be so narrow as strictly water rights?
We can bring that
I
chart.
think it's a good broad topic conversation to schedule in a time when we have less.
And maybe
other
that's a
things on the
good
agenda.
annual
Yeah.
kind of
If
thing.
we're looking at legislative parameters over you, might as well be looking at our purview on a regular basis too.
Yeah, so, what was in my mind with that little red herring discussion was, well, it was really pretty much, but, so the rate group, Becky's folks, are really thinking about finance,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
only finance. And you guys are, right now, not thinking about it at all according to the charter, although there have been discussions that affect the water rates and decisions that have, advised that affected them in the past coming out of this discussion. But there are other things like the state of the industry that I bet in the city nobody's monitoring. So for example, in the private sector, when we were building or selling electricity infrastructure of various sorts, you're looking at somebody watching how much other organizations, comparable organizations,
Right.
were paying, what the bids and asks were like. Because somebody gets a warning about, well, when we really start Nelson Flander, what are our surprises gonna be? And I don't think I don't know if it's anybody's job in the city right now to look at that kind of stuff until you do get ready to start it. Then it's engineering, but that's late.
Right.
So that's what I would like to see in the discussion.
Any other
Sometimes,
comments?
hmm?
say. Any other comments? Diane,
Yes, sir.
any comments? You know,
I do. I want to weigh in on this. We did ask the landsmith for timing and dollars in terms of those projects. Initially, like I said, we committed to the 3-year. The first year is a 6% rate, and then it goes to 10 or 10.3, depending on which category. And so I think we would very much like some support from the water board. If you don't want to insert yourself now before we approve the second reading, perhaps we do it, within the year. Because what we also wrote in is that we're going to review it every year. So if you could look at it this year, I think 6% would be agreeable as a rate increase for, I don't know. I think it's high anyway, but, that's where we went with the request.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and so if you can work on it within this year and, as we go to review it, which we review during the budget process, so by October, we could have in September, let's say,
Yeah.
input from the water board.
Okay, all right, great.
Because when it came down to what other options do we have for raising revenue, we were all like,
There
we
aren't
got
any.
nothing.
They're not.
Yeah, we got nothing.
Right.
You guys have a lot of
I don't know that
ideas.
water board's gonna do a bake sale. You know,
No,
they're
no,
not
it's talking
talking to
telecom, you know what I mean? So-
Right, everybody wants to hear me ask them for
Can't
money.
even eat 'em.
But I think more visibility for y'all definitely could come from this board, and more visibility for us would be good too. And then I think that also gets a little bit more visibility for the community, because if there is a 10% rate increase, I think the community really deserves a lot of information on why that's happening.
An understanding of what they're paying for.
Yeah.
And how long that might last,
Yeah.
and, what return they'll get on their investment.
Yeah, I think sharing information is an important thing.
Agreed.
Well, very good.
And we apologize. We didn't say, have we talked to the water board yet? But
It would be
that's
new.
my inexperience.
And yeah, actually, I think this was a new experience based on my experience on the water board, which is almost 10 years. So it was great to see it, but we'd like to see more.
Appreciate your comments.
And I will second the motion, or we'll come up with some way to introduce, let's get the water board's input for the next year.
Yeah. See, we could do just that much tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think that
Well,
would,
hey, if you can do that, I think that's important,
oh, you betcha.
Yeah,
to put the thought out there.
okay. Yeah.
So we're not surprising people and see what the reaction is. I was pleased with your reaction, and maybe there's, maybe that's something that people would want to hear.
I also think that there can be one of the things that helps with information and understanding is an affordability analysis that goes along with the rate setting. And it doesn't have to be involved, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be something as simple as how long it takes to work at minimum wage to afford an average monthly indoor water bill.
Mhm.
That's not hard, and that's kind of one of the metrics that's floating around in the water industry of this is what this is doing to, and the minimum wage number is kind of like your lower income folks that need to be affording stuff, and can they?
Yeah. And policy discussions about that several years ago, not necessarily as such, but that's why we have the CARES program. That's why the rate analysts are directed to roll in the impact on the CARES program every single year. And that's why we do have a more complicated consumption-based electric rate. That would be, are our water meters smart enough that we could have consumption-based rates? Now, we have a new billing system, so you probably got all kinds of opportunities to make over-waterers pay more. And I'm sorry, I have to take this call.
We do that.
The affordability thing?
Yeah.
Hello?
I can't remember where it is,
Yeah.
but I can try.
No, I'm in a board
It's a
meeting that
sustainability
is
thing.
just
But
ending,
because it's
5
totally
o'clock
valuable, but
here.
I think it's a great thing to fold
So
into
I
a race
was
conversation,
chatting,
because
but
there's an
um,
accountability element and
I have
what
to
you're
because
doing
the
to
meeting's
people.
over.
What's up?
What are you doing to people?
Yeah.
Because rates are such a big deal, they're, you
Yeah.
know, it's an annual,
Right.
or it's a monthly touch from your utility, and it's in your pocket. So, that's just good.
Oh, and I
Would
think
you
it's
have time
important.
to give us input before the end of the year? Or
Oh, yeah.
in January?
I'm thinking about writing an email as quickly as I can, it'll take me a week, but,
Okay.
but, you know, like,
Because I think we could
as a
delay it
board.
that long, and certainly we could ask.
I
Because
don't,
we have it in the past for other boards. to
Yeah,
weigh
and
in
I'm
on
not-
topics.
I'm not sure I wanna blow up rates the night
agree.
before second reading. A steady is good. No drama is good. More visibility is good. That's my values on this, and that's why I'm saying,
Yeah, I think-
can we get more review, but not necessarily change things for tomorrow?
No,
If we rush it, I think that could have a negative connotation. I would just,
it's gonna call a lot more attention to it too, frankly. It's gonna be all of a sudden this is expected and then it's stopped.
yeah,
Which is
so.
why, and then
And we'll get
there's,
a nice write-up in the newspaper.
yeah, and you get a heck of a lot more publicity, which is not necessarily a good thing.
You press on and we'll have them call you and then next year we'll be part of your protection.
So you just
Anyhow,
want to be
I,
clear about the plan. So what we will say is, the water board wants to weigh in on this within the next year,
For future,
that would be
Yeah,
good if
future
we could, that would be
future
good.
rates, and
and then we'll proceed with the 6%, but then, you know, when we go to review this, we'll definitely
Okay.
get more information.
All right, very
from-
good.
from you guys.
Good discussion. Anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.